What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing this week, man?
Doing well, man. Investing in GameStop because we don't care about Wall Street's advice. We're taking over and redistributing that wealth, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, that GameStop stock price was something else, huh?
It's so funny. Do I have a share? Yes, I do.
um, I actually, speaking of video games, I just wanted to share because I don't usually talk video games this much. I'm not much of a video game player myself, but I know you are, and I wanted to share my disappointment. Right, so when I was a kid growing up, used to love playing baseball video games,
Mm,
but I also
yeah.
made the choice to become an Xbox player as I got
Correct.
older, which means that I've been devoid of a good baseball video game.
Yes.
And up until this past week, I was like, here we go. We're going to get the show this year to Xbox platforms. And Sony Brazil released a rating on the 2021 The Show game. And Xbox and the Nintendo Switch were not listed as platforms, which is indicating that we might not see it on Xbox this year. So I'm pretty disappointed about that. Um, I was wondering, since you, I think, are a PlayStation person also, right? You have both systems, is that correct?
No, come
No,
on.
you
What
just do
the fuck you
Xbox.
talking now? Come on, man.
So
Yeah.
you're loyal to Xbox.
Yes.
When are we gonna get the show?
That's the thing. The license isn't exclusive anymore, so I guess it's just whether the Xbox version was ready in time. Because it's more or less being started from scratch, even though it's probably not all that different from PlayStation. Um, yeah, I guess next year then, if not this year, if that's true and that it is in fact not this year, I wouldn't rule that out just yet. But yeah, I mean, it is unique that it's like the one sports genre where the sim game is
Mhm.
exclusive, but that's going away. I mean, it makes sense that it would go away because MLB has no stake in the console wars. There's no reason why a sports game shouldn't be multi-platform just to make money,
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's coming at least. But I feel like once you do finally get your hands on one, you'll be very excited because I feel like sports sim games are even more satisfying when you haven't played them in a few years. If you get the new Madden every year, it's kind of diminishing returns. If you wait a while, I feel like you get a lot out of it.
Oh, I completely agree with that take. I hadn't bought like a new Madden until the Tom Brady one a couple years back, and I was like, "Holy crap! These graphics and this game control." But I see the reviews every year. People are like, "It's just the same old shit." So
Yeah.
be playing this baseball game. I'm gonna be like, "Oh man, I remember when I was playing." I don't. What was the one back in like '01 or '02 where like
Uh,
I
there's a
was thinking
few.
Grand
RBI
Slam.
baseball.
I used to play
Uh,
Ken Griffey Jr. a lot. That
right.
one was
Yeah.
great, man.
Yeah. Before the show kind of took it over and everything else fell by the wayside, and um, they basically gave up on 2K baseball, which was the only option for Xbox for a while. So
Yeah.
actually, it's kind of the same way. EA gave up on NBA Live because
Mhm.
NBA isn't exclusive, but 2K they just outpaced them and they couldn't keep up basically, so they don't even try anymore.
Well, that's our video game talk, riveting baseball talk here at the top. But we are going to talk about something I think is pretty interesting. That the news just dropped today that Harry Potter, which is now under the HBO Max umbrella, is going to be producing a live action television show. Not many details are out right now about what
Yeah.
this show is going to look like, what it's going to center around. Uh, Initial reaction hearing this news, Dave.
Happy about it for sure. Also, not that surprised. It makes a lot of sense given how Warner's has been moving regarding HBO Max. Remember, they've been developing spin off shows for all those DC movies. We know there's going to be one for Batman and the Suicide Squad, for example. And I mean, yeah, it's one of probably their second most valuable IP after the DC stuff, I'd have to imagine. So you got to keep that going. The Fantastic Beasts movies, whether you like them or you don't, definitely have some mixed feelings about that. Check those reviews out, youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Fantastic Beasts 3 is not expected till the end of next year. if the plan sticks, there's two more of those. Either way, you got to keep that Harry Potter stuff going. HBO's doubling down on Game of Thrones, right? We got word of a second spin-off regarding Duncan Egg. We know House of Dragons coming. So they know what their best stuff is, and they're going to make new stuff around that. So it makes plenty of sense. It's funny. It's funny, like the comments. Like this was an exclusive report from the Hollywood Reporter, and like Warner Brothers and AT&T, Warner Media, whatever, they had denied that a Harry Potter series was in any stage of development.
Okay.
And a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's clickbait. See, it's not happening." And it's like, how many times has shit been reported that it has been denied and then later confirmed?
Yeah.
What's new here, people? Come on. Like,
Also, this makes the most sense. Like, there's no reason to make an investment like this and have this IP and just let it sit at this
right.
point, especially when
I,
HBO Max is just trying to build their platform out.
I think a reason behind that statement, beyond like just the normal stuff we expect, again, Chris Evans denied that the Captain America talks had resumed, right? And Tatiana Maslany said she wasn't She Hulk until Kevin Feige mentioned it on the investor call, right? Like this happens all the time. But it's important to note that NBC Universal actually has the distribution rights to Harry Potter. The IP is owned by Warner's, but NBCU has like everything regarding Harry Potter. So and that goes through 2025. Does that mean the show can't exist until 2025? I don't know. Maybe they'll strike a deal. If you remember, Harry Potter launched, the movies launched on HBO Max, then left after a few months because actually, when they're coming back to Peacock, because
Mhm.
NBC actually has that right. They like took a check from Warner's to have it there for the Max launch. So I wonder if that has something to factor in. Either way, obviously it's not close. It sounds like it's just being discussed. And I mean, yeah, duh. Why wouldn't they discuss something like this?
I mean, on the one hand, I think it's the sort of thing where some people look at the Harry Potter movies that have been made, even Fantastic Beasts, and are pretty protective of them. I think for as much as you can look at some of the early ones and the CGI isn't great and the acting's not great, but they're kids. People like the movies. On the other hand, I want to see them redo everything, and I don't know if I necessarily want the whole Harry Potter story over again. But why don't we start with like let's see Snape's story. Let's see more of Dumbledore's like
Mm.
adventures. McGonagall. Like I feel like you can take those people and center, like mini series around them, tie things back together. I mean, what do you want to see out of a Harry
Yeah.
Potter series?
Well, this just reminds me of everything we've talked about with Star Wars spin-offs and even Thrones spin-offs, right? It's like, do you want to connect to the existing canon that the average fan knows about, or do you do something completely new? Um, the Hogwarts Legacy video game that's coming out in 2022, not canon. J.K. Rowling's not involved in that, but that's actually taking place in the 1800s, which is decades before even Fantastic Beasts. And basically, is going to be like, brand new, not connected to what we know. Makes sense. It's a playground, a sandbox. Like we talk about with Star Wars. Uh, I think there's plenty of potential to do something like that. Why don't we just go do shit at Hogwarts in the 1600s?
Yeah,
Cool. Why not? I guess you could, if you want to like do name brand stuff, you could do like the founding of Hogwarts with like Godric Gryffindor and Salazar Slytherin and those cats if you wanted to, I guess, sure.
hmm.
I would love this to be set at Hogwarts though, just kind of show more of that, like
Yeah,
because Harry Potter, the books, the books really get into it, but the movies kind of have to whip through, especially at the end. Like, remember, like Quidditch never shows up in later movies at all.
yeah,
Like, they don't go to classes again. Like, they had to focus on the greater plot. But if you had maybe like I don't know, a lower stakes Harry Potter thing
yeah.
in show form, the other alternative though is I have to imagine J.K. Rowling's gonna be involved in some way because she controls
Yeah, all the
so much of the
IP.
creative process. And despite all the controversy with her statements about trans people aside, she's going to be involved. She's not involved in the video game, but that was by her choice. You have to imagine she's involved. Maybe you do this like post Potter epilogue, post Cursed Child, and set it in like the present times because like the Harry Potter stories in the 90s. I guess that's a option too. There's plenty of options, but I would like Hogwarts to be kind of the familiarity, like like Mandalorian took us to Tatooine, and we had some familiar beats there. Well, let's set it in Hogwarts, something we know, and everything else can be new for all I care.
Yeah, I even feel like there's maybe something post show if you do want to like post the Harry Potter stories if you want to connect it to the main IP. Maybe it's like, loosely you see some of these characters pop up, but it's following. I saw you tweet about like Law and Order,
Yeah,
you know,
not my joke, but it's a great night, great meme.
but it would be funny to see something like that, or interesting to see that like Oars like going around have like almost like a procedural show or something like
Sure.
that. You can get weird, and even like I could see them if they have a couple of hits do something like what Marvel's doing now, where you have a whole bunch of shows exploring all different parts, and you
Yeah,
just really can build out so much of this world.
why not?
So
Why not?
w-
I mean, that was kind of the potential of Fantastic Beasts, right? Oh, we get to see the Wizarding World in America, outside of England. Cool. What's that like? And yeah, I mean, returns are so, but that's more about the creative choices than anything else, right? Like
mhm.
there's so much untapped potential in the Wizarding World. We still, haven't done any of it.
If they said we're gonna do a Game of Thrones level production retelling of the original Harry
Oh,
Potter story, would you be in?
jeez. I mean, sure, of course, just because on the chance it's better. Because like the Harry Potter movies are very up and down as far as
Mhm.
adaptations of the text go. But it's not. I actually really don't want that, to be honest. Like the books are the books. The books are good
Mhm.
enough. I don't need you to try again. Like just do
Yeah,
something new, but just add to it.
I think I wouldn't mind seeing it maybe in a couple of years. You kind of test out these ideas, build out the world, and if you find a director who just really connects with this world and Rowling
Hmm.
really trusts, maybe then you're like, let's retell this. But it's too
Yeah.
too soon, in my opinion.
And I think the key question with this, and as we've been saying, the scope of how far they take Harry Potter TV and Harry Potter media is how involved does J.K. Rowling remain? Because George Lucas, originally the sole creative force behind Star Wars, was stopped being involved, and Disney has had their ups and downs, and seems to now they just kind of take pitches. You got a cool Star Wars idea? Tell us about it, and we'll let you know what we think. I would
True.
love if they did that with Harry Potter, but and even have J.K. hear the pitches. I don't know, but like I feel like you kind of got to open it up a little bit, unless she has a great plan, I guess. But yeah, she'll probably just be involved and do everything. I don't know.
I mean, I don't mind her being involved, but I do feel like I'd like to see some new voices telling these stories. 'Cause I think the more you inspect J.K.'s writings and
Right.
world perspective, the more you can kind of pick apart some
Yeah.
not so great
Fantastic
things.
Beasts 3 did pick up other co-writers in addition to her, so that's a positive sign at least that she's willing to have other people give input. So, but I mean, some people will just be out on this given the J.K. Rowling of it all. Totally understandable, but at the end of the day, she's gonna remain involved because it's her shit. She gets to do what she wants with it.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this. Sounds like you are as well. Give us the Harry Potter content, and give us that Euphoria content. Probably a show J.K. Rowling did not watch. If I'm being quite honest.
Certainly not.
Um, but
God.
we got the second Euphoria special, part two,
Yep.
Jules. A trip through the mind of Jules, I guess, and
Hmm.
it's kind of this like in treatment esque episode where it's very much Jules talking to a therapist, exploring the things she's been through. I'd say incredibly vulnerably, and I think a really interesting depiction of uh, her identity as a trans male to female transgender person, um, her relationship with sex and feeling loved, and her relationship with Rue. Really, I think well done, and it has the euphoria touches, the liability by Lord dropping at just the right time.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Opening with it, seeing all these scenes play out in the iris of Jules's eye, and
Mhm.
um, then you also kind of get the scene where it almost feels a bit manic, like you're almost like jumping from thought to thought, like spinning around, all these cool transitions, kind of trippy in a sense. I thought the episode was great. I mean, very different from the Rue episode, so a lot to kind of juxtapose there. But overall, I found this to be a really intriguing episode. How did you like it?
Yeah, I also liked it, and like that it was different than the Ruse special. This time around, it's not a two-hander between Zendaya and Coleman Domingo. Like, yes, there's a second character, the Jules therapist, but she's really there to listen, like a therapist,
Mhm.
right? This is really all Jules, but I think that was smart because you get less of Jules in Euphoria proper because it's mainly focused on Zendaya's lead POV, even if we get a lot of Jules as well. And in the process, this actually kind of adds to like her journey in season one. You learn more stuff about her, like the stuff about her mom, I believe is completely new.
Mhm.
And, juxtaposing having a mom who struggled with addiction that she cut off and can't stand while also realizing that she's like the sole sobering force in Rue's life. It's kind of a unique parallel. Um, and I just like both these specials for how they are different than Euphoria season one, because Euphoria season one is very maximalist, very showy, very neon lights, not to mention a lot of aggressive, over the top narratives, right? So
Mhm.
this is much more stripped down, much more dialogue focused out of necessity because these were like, shot in quarantine to hold people over till they could get season two really going. And it's just kind of really cool again that they actually had like some real substance for the characters in these two specials because
Mhm.
I mean, testament to Sam Levinson. He really uh, knows what he's doing with this show, but it's really cool to see a whole other side to it with these two specials.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the thing Levinson gets at that's really fascinating to me is how he kind of strips back in these two episodes each of these characters to where their mental health issues probably stem from, in relation to Rue losing, being born and losing her dad. I think when she was just a baby, or maybe like her mom might have even been pregnant. I forgot what the timeline was there, but pretty much like growing up without a dad who died in 9/11, if I remember that correctly. And then also, Jules and the relationship with her mom and how that really impacted her. Um, and then how they kind of look for similar parts of those things that they didn't have in each other, those like steadying forces. I mean, there's that scene or that part in the beginning when uh Jules is comparing Rue to how a mother might look at like a baby. It just like pretty much unconditional love is what she's describing. And um the therapist asks, is that how your mom looked at you? And you can see in Jules's face how quickly she kind of like snaps back and is like, well, you're just a baby, you don't remember those things, and kind of cuts off away from that emotion. But the way that they kind of tie these things together is really, I think, expertly done. And um, like you said, I think this kind of takes Euphoria, which can be this show that people see as just big and vibrant and bombastic at times, and really, I think, strip it down to what's at the center of these stories, which are these teenagers going through a lot of shit and trying to figure it all out. So, um, definitely very impressed with these two episodes, and awesome to get some Euphoria content before we were really expecting it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. What'd you think of the brand new song in the Jewel special, the Billie Eilish Rosalia collab that airs
Yeah,
in the middle? Came out a few days ago.
I thought it was pretty cool. Oh, did you have any thoughts on it? It wasn't something that really stood out too much to me, but I don't know. I thought it
Yeah,
was nice.
I would have liked a little more from it just because it's like a Billy first song and it's like Rosalia like fitting into that. It doesn't really
Yeah.
feel like those two who are very different as artists coming together, but still cool
Mhm.
to hear nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the show, even when it doesn't totally hit like that, I think it's still they blend everything together so seamlessly. It barely stands out to me,
Yes.
at least. Any last thoughts on this before we move on?
Have to imagine that Euphoria season two is still a ways away. I wouldn't
Yeah,
believe they've gotten back into production. Like we know Succession is back into production, and but like I feel like Euphoria is still kind of a ways away. They probably just haven't been able to find a way to make it the way they want to, and thus are just kind of kicking the can, unfortunately. But happy to wait.
for sure. A show we'll be tuning into whenever it's on. Why don't we jump to a show that I can't wait to tune back into, which is Lupin.
Hell yeah.
The I don't know, was it BBC or no? What is this on?
It's a Netflix show
It's
made for
on
Netflix.
Netflix,
Yeah.
which I'm kind of surprised.
It's also
This
French, so it wouldn't be BBC.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know why I thought BBC, but I think it's because I got a lot of like BBC type show vibes
Yep.
from
It's the
this.
French channel Canal
Something
Plus, I
like
think
that.
it's called.
And
Yes, nailed it.
look at that. And I was really impressed with this show. And actually, it's funny because the first episode it starts off with a very big heist, and I actually kind of got left the first episode, and I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm totally bought into this. But by the time you get around to the third or fourth, I was like totally hooked. And I felt like it really started clicking on all cylinders. And they leave you after the fifth episode on a bit of a cliffhanger. Very interested to see where the rest of the show goes when we get part two. Um, but Dave, did you enjoy this as much as I did?
Oh yeah, I mainlined this show and actually watched all 5 episodes in one sitting. Something I
Wow.
honestly can't remember the last time I've done. Uh, really loved it. Lupin came out worldwide on Netflix back on January 8th. Kind of to I think a little fanfare in terms of like I didn't see a lot of press for it, at least here in the U.S.
Mhm.
But it became the first French show to get into the Netflix top 10 and has remained there for the most of, if not the all of the past 2 weeks, and it's definitely a big sensation for them. And you can see that that's obvious. And Netflix, they just continue to just grab moments and dominate conversation. This reminds me a lot of how Queen's Gambit was on very few people's radar, despite all the pedigree going into it. Still kind of snuck up on people, and
Mhm.
Lupin. Uh, I think, especially to Americans, the average American probably is not something that's super familiar, even though it's this, classic uh, character and set of stories in France. Like I
Mhm.
was really unfamiliar with it, and I had known of the Lupin the Third anime, which was based on like they made up like a grandson of the Lupin character. I'd known of that. I didn't know it was connected to this show or these famous novels, which are like the closest thing France has to like a James Bond or a Sherlock Holmes kind of story. Um, and then to see that, I think the interesting choice with this show is that it's not an adaptation, but rather like an inspiration. Like the Lupin stories exist in real life in the story of Lupin the show, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think it's not only really cool how they kind of like brought these stories to life, but they do it in a way that doesn't feel totally outlandish. Especially as you like read. I'm sure as you read those stories, and again, I'm not super familiar with them. I can imagine that they probably feel more realistic, but still like someone who's basically just like a sleight of hand. I don't want to say magician because he's not necessarily a magician.
The gentleman thief archetype is what you'll
Right.
see thrown
But
around, kind of like Danny Ocean and
yeah,
Ocean's 11, for example, or even like Catwoman, that kind of thing.
but I feel like Omar Sy really like embodies Asan and that vibe so well. And he's like this kind of like big hulking guy. So you wouldn't
Yeah,
really expect him to like be that like quick and just like able to like I don't know, move in and out like he does, but he's really slick in this.
yeah, and I think that's probably the best part about the show if you look at it from a macro view, because Omar Sy is this imposing like 6'2" black man, a non-traditional Parisian, and the
Mhm.
show kind of dabbles in that as it goes, where Hassan knows his status and like will
Mhm.
call people out on that, or like notice when people like give him side eye, right? As like, why is this black man walking around here? Like it's pretty tactful, I would say, but the show has the pace of Lupin, 5 episodes for this first part of the show. And we know this at part two is coming, but these first 5 episodes, I feel like a lot happens. It reminds me of that just consistent like economics that comes with European dramas where they're short seasons that are really effective and efficient.
Mhm.
And in the process of being efficient, Lupin manages to like thread that needle where Omar Sy should not be getting away with everything he's doing. He is a very assuming person and
Mhm.
should be recognizable, but he's not, and you don't care because of how well paced the show is and how rhythmic it is.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it.
I know it when he's in the first episode they do this heist at the Louvre. They have a uh, auction of a famous necklace with all these diamonds worth like what
Mhm.
I think he buys it for $50 million or the equivalent to that over there. So it ain't cheap. And
Yes.
um, when someone does that, you would think that there would be all this fanfare and all these people kind of like tuning into this, but then things go down. Necklace obviously gets stolen. It's that kind of kicks off the whole series in a sense. But I never was like, this is like super unrealistic. I think if anything, what I found almost like unbelievable in the first episode, I didn't totally buy into, was I felt like Omar C was almost too casual in some of his like responses, and I was like, he seems aloof a bit on the screen, but then I think that comes about more as like you understand the character and
Right.
what they're going for.
Yeah, I mean, watching him walk out of the service entrance in the middle of the Louvre pyramid like plaza area, wearing this nice suit and literally holding like the like little briefcase the necklace was in, not
Mhm.
even hide, or no, he's just holding the necklace,
Yep.
not even hiding. I was like, okay, man, like
Yeah.
let's be a little more discreet here, my guy. But as the show progressed, it's like, oh no, I get it, it's working.
Was there any episodes or any like the schemes or plots that you really loved, or that, I mean, it
Mhm.
seems like you really like the whole first half of this so far.
Yeah, I really like how it starts. Like again, like the whole getting the gang together thing with his what do you call it? Coworkers on the heist. That happens in like a few seconds. It's like
Hmm.
so quick, and yeah, I found it quite thrilling. But in general, I appreciated how actually invested I was with a lot of like the other side plots, right? Like his ex-wife or baby moms and his son. That didn't feel superfluous. I actually felt like they did a good job with that and built it up to the fact that when you get that cliffhanger in episode 5, it actually lands.
Yeah.
Also, I really like that disgraced journalist character popping up towards the end. I thought
Hmm.
that was quite effective, and you kind of know what's coming in terms of her fate before it happens, and like that dread sets in. But regardless, still quite effective.
Yeah, I agree. I think they really built up the backstory really well, and that's why I really like the third episode where he kidnaps the commissioner and is, I don't know about like torturing him, but he's basically like holding him hostage and trying to get information out of him. And
Yes.
the way that they kind of like juxtapose that in the present to Hassan's past of, after his dad kills himself in prison, he's basically raising himself and he's facing a lot of bullying at school. He's very lonely. Like they kind of build in these things that are happening in the present and why those are more meaningful with the history in a really seamlessly, and I think a way that makes a lot of sense and really pushes the narrative along. And like you said, you end up really, I think, feeling attached to these characters. Like I know in that final episode when they couldn't find Raul, I was like, oh man, I had this real like pit in my stomach. But I think you kind of also saw that coming too, right? The second Raul went off to the beach on his own, I was like,
Hmm.
this kid's getting kidnapped. Like they're gonna lose him. Um, any other like performances or people that stood out to you in this?
Hmm. I mean, obviously Omar C stands out. He's in basically every scene,
Hmm.
and he's quite good. He has that charm that I
Yeah.
think the San character requires.
Hmm.
That's great. They're not more than like stock characters really, but I did enjoy a lot of like the cops that are kind of
Yeah.
on his tail, and like I like seeing that banter in the station, even if it's
Hmm.
nothing you haven't seen before. Still like that.
I'm really interested to see. Uh, so the cop Yusef, the one who kind of is like cracking the Lupin
Hmm.
connection here. I really found that character to be really intriguing, and I'm interested to see now that he's kind of figured it out that Hassan is Lupin, if they're going to potentially like team up or how that's going to be working, if he's going to run interference for him. A lot of really interesting things to be figured out in the second half of the season. So we'll be tuning into that, and we recommend that you catch up if you can. We don't have a drop date for the
We
next 5
don't, but we do know part two was filmed already, so they
Mhm.
did say 2021.
So I'm guessing probably maybe like fall. We might get it.
Yeah,
Really build
probably.
anticipation.
I also wanted to note in that first episode when he's casing the Louvre as a guy working there. Uh, you see the room where the Mona Lisa is, and I like that it also shows on the other side of that room is the wedding at Cana the Veronese painting that's like 20 feet tall.
Mhm.
Like the long table that Jesus is sitting at. And I always just wanted to point out, whenever I can, that that is a way better painting than the Mona Lisa. And if you go to the Louvre, you'll have a great view of it because everyone's staring at the Mona Lisa, even though they can't get right next to it. Meanwhile, that amazing painting, you can touch it if you really wanted to. Like,
Jeez.
my favorite part of the Louvre is just that dichotomy of like a superior painting that no one pays attention to in the same room as the Mona Lisa, which is 5 feet tall or whatever.
I have a major love hate
Not even.
relationship with art museums, so we can get into that on a different podcast someday. But we're gonna jump
Antiquity
now.
now. Tune in.
We'll jump to The Climb, the 2019 technically film that we're just getting to in 2021 because we didn't go to any of the film festivals this was at, and then it's supposed to be released back in March and got pushed back and back and back because of COVID. Finally dropped, I think, in November. Is that
Correct.
right?
hmm
Jeez.
VOD
Um,
last week.
and this is a movie with really not many people that you would know. I guess like Gal Rankin is probably
Yeah,
the most famous actress in this
for sure.
from Glow. We saw her in something else
Perry
recently.
Mason last year.
Yes, thank you, Perry Mason. So you know, this is a movie that I think none of us were expecting, but I found it pretty delightful. How did you enjoy The Climb, Dave?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's just a movie I had been anticipating after that warm con reception nearly 2 years ago, and I just I had on the list for last March, and then put it on the delay pile like everything else, of course. So yeah, not having any expectations for it beyond expecting it to be good. I quite liked it. I thought there's some like structural choices in the movie that kind of stand out. Right, it's like basically told in a series of vignettes, and those vignettes, are just really long scenes, usually really long takes, if not one takes. And
Mhm.
in the process, you just kind of hang out with these characters, and it's melodramatic, but it's also funny, and I thought it was quite lovely.
I found it to be a very frustrating film from the perspective of the character Mike, who is like the friend. I guess they're both kind of protagonists, but Kyle is really the person you root for. He's really the protagonist you want to see um, come out of this on top. And Kyle and Mike have this really weird relationship where
Mhm.
Kyle is just like the nicest guy ever, seems to like be kind of falling upwards in life, and Mike is just a shitbag of a person. Like, and I just wanted the whole time for Kyle just to like stop hanging out with this dude. I totally got where Marissa, played by Gal Rankin, was coming from, and just trying to like do anything to get him away from Mike because Mike is toxic, man. I hated that
Yeah.
character.
Well, I saw that in like negative reviews comments. It's like, I don't know, just pick better partners and friends.
Yeah,
And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings, though, right? Oh, if we just call the Eagles and drop the ring in, I guess there's no movie, right?
right.
So, but it's a good point. Yeah, it's hard to root for Mike because from the first scene, which maybe is the strongest scene in the film, when they're
Totally.
biking up and down hills in France, and like Mike is this, really like uh, enthusiastic cyclist, and Kyle isn't. And then Mike just kind of drops that he had slept with Kyle's fiance on the eve of their uh, nuptials, and then you're like, oh shit, well that's quite the bomb. And then later on, it happens again, and like I really like the flip though that happens where Mike is the one who uh, becomes out of shape, and Kyle loses the weight, right? And they kind of like
Yeah.
situations, but yeah, I mean, from the jump, it's hard to root for Mike, and then when he comes back into the fold, you can tell he's it's self-destructive, a bit self-centered anyway.
Hmm.
But in the process, again, like a lot of those scenes, yeah, some of it's hard to watch, some of it's cringy, but like I really like that Christmas scene where Mike
Mm.
like falls through the table, and like you again get the offhand comments from the sisters and the
Yeah.
parents stuff, and that scene in particular, yeah, maybe it's a little like film school 101, but you get that steady cam following around the house, and you focus on each window as you move around, and it remains in one take on that steady cam, and I really like that one, especially because going into that scene, you transition from like that fall leave scene, and the next thing you know, it's Mike in the car with snow against like a quick wipe.
Mhm.
So I appreciate those flourishes. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I just kind of laughed at a lot of stuff. Like again, it's a little dark, but like I was laughing pretty consistently.
Probably the one I laughed the hardest at, the moment I laughed the hardest at was I think it was was it Grow Up? Yeah, when they're at the church and he comes and he like drives his car up like over the church lawn and he's like, "All right, let's fucking do this." And he just runs in and he's like, "I object." And they're like, we don't do that
Yeah,
here." Like what are you doing? And then he's like, "You can't marry her." Like and my favorite moment is when it all kind of dies down and like the one sister's boyfriend is like, "That was awesome." And the
yeah.
guy's like, he's like, "Thanks." Like it's just such a funny like
and
follow up
and
moment.
before that, Kyle's dad's like, sometimes in life you just have to pick yourself up and keep going,
Yeah.
or
Also,
something like that.
when he first showed up, Mike first showed up. Another, I think it was like an uncle was like, "Oh, shit's about to get good." Like I was like, "This is like exactly what I want to see at like any wedding that I go to." Just very entertaining.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think some vignettes are stronger than others. Like when in the last one when he's moving out, I was like, okay, this one isn't really doing a lot for me. It's nice to like see them, I guess, like finding some sort of like middle ground in their relationship, but it didn't really go like it didn't really change that much over the course of the movie.
Hmm.
And I guess that's probably the point is like you kind of like I guess if the movie has a point on relationships, like sometimes you just like are stuck into these relationships that you have since childhood and you can't find a way to change them or get out of them. But man, I just wanted Kyle to like grow a sack and like just totally cut him off. He just couldn't do it.
That's right.
Frustrating.
Yeah. But at the same time, he did get divorced.
That's true.
Mike was right.
um, Interesting because Mike and Kyle, the two main characters, that's their actual names, Kyle Marvin and Michael Angelo Covino. Um, wrote it was directed by Angelo Covino, and they all, also produced it together. So maybe this is a pair we'll be hearing more from. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely. We'll be checking out their next thing for sure. Uh, Also, shout out Mike's parents for naming him Michael Angelo,
Yeah.
first and middle name. And there's also I kind of forgot the context of, it, but there was one scene where the two of them are talking. It's like, "What's good?" And then he immediately responds, "Peaky Blinders." And I was like, "Yeah, that was funny."
And it
So
reminded me that we have to catch up on that. So,
yeah, final
uh,
season in production now.
Peaky Blinders review coming soon. But even sooner is another Netflix film, The White Tiger, from Ramin Barani. Got it
Yep.
right. And man, I found this to be a pretty delightful and surprising little Netflix drop. And especially for January Netflix drops,
Yes.
pretty surprised to have enjoyed one this much. This is a story about Indian people. Specifically Balram, played by Adrash Gurai, who is looking to um, change his status in life to move up cast from the cast with the little belly to the cast with the big belly,
Mm.
and really. Uh, Throughout the movie, a Run the Jewels song was stuck in my head, which is lie, cheat, steal, kill, win. Come on, everybody doing it. And that's pretty much like if you have to define the movie in a short sentence, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, sure.
Did you find this movie
Kill
as
your
enjoyable as
masters,
I
if
did?
you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I think it's straightforward. Like I don't think it's the subtlest thing with its themes, but it's still like a classic rags to riches story, and it has stunning production values. It was shot in Delhi. You can definitely tell, and I like it as a companion piece to Slumdog Millionaire. A lot of people obviously are making that comment. What is it? Barani is actually a friend of the guy who wrote the book that was adapted into Slumdog Millionaire. But in Slumdog Millionaire, Dev Patel's character uh, kind of picks himself up out of the poor cast due to like luck and circumstance and chance, more or less. In The White Tiger, uh, Balran he's an active participant in his upward mobility. And
Mhm.
I think that's pretty stark. I also appreciate that, Balron isn't like infallible. He's not in control all the time. He makes mistakes and
Mhm.
misjudges, situations pretty consistently throughout his rise. So I found that much, quite believable, and I think it's, I like that um, different side of this. Again, kind of similar sentiment of trying to build yourself up out of a society that's not going to do much to help you do that otherwise, right?
Mhm.
And the way Tiger, I like, I wish we got more of it, was more stuff about that caste system, right? Like
Yeah.
as Balran's like narrating, he's mentioning like globalism stuff all the time about how India and China are the future, and
America is
Americans are
ahead.
outsourcing in India and all this stuff. Now there's so
Mhm.
much on the surface, I think, like geopolitically, that they could have even gotten into more, because like the caste system stuff and like the corruption of like the Indian society is like touched on throughout the way he's treated as a servant. Like it's simmering, but like I wish he almost addressed it more directly.
Mhm.
And I haven't read the book, but the book from '08 actually, is award winning. And this structure of narration is from the book. And, it's a faithful adaptation as a result. I wonder if maybe if this story would have been even better if we didn't start with like an in media res moment where we, see the kid get hit by the car, right? And like
Yeah.
flashback. And like we know he's successful right away eventually. And we're seeing how he got there. I wonder if it could have been better, like dramatically, if we'd built to that without kind of spilling the beans right away.
Yeah, that was really fascinating, and it's funny because to start the movie with that, and then have that be, I don't want to say like an inconsequential part of the movie, but you kind of had already seen Balram moving like towards this thing where he's like, I have to like start doing more stuff. I have to keep like he was like seeing them as family, so to speak. Oh, you're my
Mhm.
family, you're my brother. But you could tell that like the seams were starting to show a little bit, like with it. So I don't even know if that was like the most breaking part in the movie for him. I mean, certainly I think it's the most dramatic part because you see, I think there's a lot there in terms of not only the role that being in this cast and then trying to create this upwards mobility like also corrupts his morals and
Yeah,
corrupts the person
sure.
he is. But you also, I think, see a lot of the like Americanized perspective and corruption in those like in his masters, so to speak. Like
Mhm.
I really found like Pinky and Ashok to be two characters that as they're like kind of portraying that like American like intellectual idealism over in India, just really like reprehensible people who like are on the surface like, oh, like
Mhm.
how are, like what do you want, like how can we help you get better, and then like when push comes to shove are just like total dirtbags who.
Still paying him like shit too as a servant.
Exactly. And then when if he got like annoying or if he's too like overbearing on a shook, especially when his brother comes back afterwards and he's notices he's not a great influence, he pushes him. He tells him to go away. I don't want you near. They tell him he smells. Like it's really awful treatment. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
they on the surface they try to act like these like philanthropist people. I found that to be a very interesting commentary. Um, I agree though. I don't think this is like the subtlest movie, especially like at the very end, you pretty much just get a straight narration, talking to the camera,
Yeah.
monologue from him. But um, I think for what my expectation was this movie going in, I found this to be just super engaging and fun throughout.
Definitely. Definitely. I really like the Get Pop and Fat Joe drop when they first get to
Yeah.
Delhi. That was well done. But yeah, I mean, like it's a it's 2 hour movie, but the end and the beginning, you can tell that Balram doesn't have much connection to his family, especially once his dad dies, and like it's just kind of like yada yada that he probably got his whole family killed in retaliation via a newspaper headline. He doesn't even say anything about it. I was
I
like,
know.
oh wow, that is something, all right. And I guess he rationalized that. Well, either we all live at the bottom or one of us gets out now versus buying the shack later. It's like, all right, I guess you're happy with that. That's fine. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, like thematically, it's just like you're either the chicken waiting to get your head cut off or you bust out of the coop. which one you gonna be? And it's like, all
Yep.
right, we got it. So, yeah, like I don't know if there's much like payoff with that throughout the film, but it's just kind of fun to see the story played out because
Yeah.
again, production values are strong.
For sure. Definitely a movie worth checking out, especially because I guess up until this coming week, Dave, we don't really have a ton of new high quality movies to be checking out. So this is a pleasant surprise. Any last
Hmm.
thoughts before we wrap up for the show?
Seems to be another hit for Netflix in their top 10 right now. First thing I've seen Priyanka Chopra do in a while. She's an active actor, but first thing I've been kind of tuned in. I haven't liked all of her choices in terms of movies in the West. But I actually kind of liked her. Like I understood why she picked the role because initially, early on, I'm like, oh, it's just kind of the girlfriend character that's from America, so she has a slightly different perspective on things. But like you could tell, like she gets at least a few scenes and pieces of dialogue to
Mm,
make her make it worth her while. I guess you could say.
for sure. I actually didn't even realize that was Priyanka Chopra till after that ended. I was like, oh, she's married to a Jonas Brother. That's how I most know her. But a
Yeah.
very famous Bollywood actress, and
Oh yeah.
definitely gonna break through here at some point. So, all right, what do people gotta be watching for next week?
So next week we will be talking about Judas and the Black Messiah, courtesy of Sundance, baby. That's
Woo!
coming out on the 12th on HBO Max. So we'll get to that early. And there's some other stuff like The Dig on Netflix. Speaking of Carrie Mulligan, back to her once again. And we got HBO Max's The Little Things, Denzel, Jared Leto, Rami Malek. Exciting. There's some other movies we might be checking out as well. Music from Arlo Parks. So TV front's still quiet, but the movie uh, clip will be going through February by the look of it, which is nice.
Hell yeah! And stay tuned for all that. Hit that subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and let us know your thoughts on the podcast on with a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Also, follow us on Twitter at nostalgiapod. And follow Dave for more takes on Harry Potter themed television shows. We'll talk to you all next week.